Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rico Borrego.
I am your other co-host, Tony Borrego.
And this is the podcast known as Relatively Sound, the podcast that is brought to you by Beechwood Park. Today, Tony and I are continuing our album for album series for this month. As you may have just heard, our last episode, which was also released today, we covered my recommendation of Jason Isbell and the 400 Units' latest album, Weather Vanes, that came out this year. That was what Tony listened to this month. And Tony, you recommended me the Zombies album, Odessey and Oracle. I will give you my brief history with the Zombies. I know of them. I knew the song Time of the Season, because I would say that's probably their most well-known song. And I knew the song This Will Be Our Year, thanks to the Foo Fighters cover of it, which appeared on their Record Store Day covers album called Medium Rare. And other for that, I did not know anything else on this album, nor did I know any of the lore that went behind the band. So why don't you give us your history with the band and also the lore with this album and the band themselves? Because when I did my research, I was really surprised by everything that I learned about it.
Well, I feel bad because I guess I don't know the lore.
I can explain the lore then, but just give us your background with the band then.
Okay, yeah. So, I feel like I explained to you, off the podcast, my background a little bit, but I can't even really remember what I said. I know this is quite embarrassing, but yeah. So I did know Time of the Season, of course, and then I also did know the Foo Fighters cover of This Will Be Our Year, thanks to you. I know kind of a big point for me how I got into the Zombies was I was into the Beach Boys already, and I ended up seeing Brian Wilson live, his band. They were doing the Something Great from '68 tour. So the Beach Boys played a lot of songs from their '68 release, Friends, and the Zombies actually played Odessey and Oracle in its entirety, which is very cool. I cannot remember if I was kind of getting into the Zombies prior to that concert. I did know that Elliott Smith does a cover of Care of Cell 44, the opening track from this record. Otherwise though, like when I heard this record, it was all kind of new stuff to me. And I don't know why I specifically remember this, but I was working at Target and I was listening to this record a lot and just remember being blown away. Really great stuff. It still sounds good today, at least to me. And I think it's kind of hard to make a statement like this being, much younger than the record, but it really seems like an important record that's ahead of its time. And it seems like, to me, I think any songwriter should give it a listen, and I think that they'll at least find something out of it. Kind of like, everyone needs to hear the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. It's important, it's ahead of its time, it's fantastic, and I'm sure you'll like something from it and get something from it. So, if you want to go ahead, Rico, what is this lore that you're mentioning? Maybe I know about it but don't realize it.
Okay, so the album, as you mentioned, was released in 1968, and it was their second studio album. And like after the album was released, they were dropped from the record label Decca Records. And at first, it seems like the album didn't do that well, and like the song, like Time of the Season later became a huge song from them, but it was like a surprise like single in the US. Like the popularity of it came like a year later, and the band broke up after after this album was released, shortly after. And they broke up and didn't come back and do a third album until 1991.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like this album was released and the band was even disappointed with like, I remember I read somewhere that like they wanted the opening track, Carousel 44, to be released as a single, but like it wasn't.
What?
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of
no.
long
I'm
for a
sorry.
single
I'm sorry.
from that time.
I misspoke. I didn't mean that song. I meant This Will Be Our Year. They were wanting that song to be a single because they thought it would make a good single, but it wasn't released as a single. Carousel was.
That's what I thought.
But yeah, so like the band split basically. I think they even split like before the album came out. Like they didn't perform these songs live after the album was released. And to the point where when the album did become a success, at least the song Time of the Season in the US, there were fake versions of the Zombies doing live performances in 1969 to promote the song since the band already broke up. So
That's
so yeah, and then like the album later received great reviews, and then like you said, they've done a lot of touring for this album since, even as late as when you saw them a couple years ago, maybe
maybe like
2019 for
yeah,
COVID.
yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so
Um,
I was really shocked that it was like, an album that like out the album didn't really break up the band. It seems like when the band was dropped from the label, and then it didn't perform as well as they wanted to. But then like we mentioned, Time of the Season became like a huge hit from them, and
and
so
I don't know each of the band members like history personally, but I have a friend Stan who actually like did live sound engineering, and the band that he was working for, they were playing after Rod Argent, the pianist, his band was playing, and they told him like, hey, if you go over your time, that cuts away from our set. So if you could just be careful of that. And so Rod Argent just kept jamming out with his band, and so he actually had to pull the plug on them. So I don't know. I think that kind of maybe that speaks of his character a little bit. But it's hard when you're doing something creative with other people, and to work on something for a long time and then have a record label drop you, like that would suck, hardcore. But funnily enough, though, I mean, you said there was a couple decade gap until their third album, but I think they released an album this year even.
yeah, they've released
crazy.
a couple since that 1991 album, since like their reunion.
Yeah, and they did a lot of touring for this album. Like there's several times they've done like the whole album on different tours, which is kind of interesting.
And supposedly I read that in 2016 they announced that they'd be performing the album for like the last time together, or like just the album front to back. But then, as you know, they ended up doing it again in 2019, at least with the surviving members, because I do think one of them passed away. I don't know which one. Fortunately, I don't know the kind of like you. I don't know the history with the band themselves and like with the actual musicians on the album. It does look like one of the guitarists did pass away in 2004. Now that I'm looking at it,
I do remember on the tour, they started off with just a set of some of their other songs. So She's Not There, being their other like big hit. And it was interesting because they had like, I think, a younger fellow like on bass or something like that. But then when they did the actual Odessey and Oracle, they actually had the original member come up to play that album. I believe the guy who stepped out, though, helped with some of the additional, like instruments and backup vocals. And it was cool because Brian Wilson's keyboard is kind of his right-hand man for kind of assembling his live show. He actually really, he did a lot of the keyboard work too and singing for the Zombies. And I guess that goes back, a couple decades as well. So cool stuff. But let's dive in the actual album now. So I've kind of hyped up this album a lot. I mean, a lot of people, would too. Initial thoughts hearing it? Anything that just kind of popped in your head? Is it what you were expecting?
So I would say it was what I was expecting, but maybe even better than I was expecting for the most part. I will say when this album is strong, I almost think there's a couple of songs in here that I think rival some of the Beach Boys and the Beatles' best songs, because on a lot of my notes, I did mention how there seemed to be similar sounds from like the Beach Boys and the Beatles, which makes sense because all three bands were, releasing music around this time. And then there's some more current bands and artists that I'll get into later that I feel like maybe took inspiration from this album in particular, or maybe just the band in general. So when the album was like strong, like I said, there's some moments, and I'll get into them specifically, that I think there are moments where I felt like I enjoyed this album more than when we did the Beach Boys album.
Summer Days and Summer Nights.
Summer Nights, yeah, we did last month with our friend Chris. there are moments where I enjoyed it more than that album. Um, and that's from a songwriting standpoint, from a production standpoint, a playing standpoint, and even sometimes vocal standpoints. Um, at least vocal, I would say like vocal harmonies. Because I feel like moments with the harmonies, it feels like Beach Boys. And then I feel like with instrumentation, especially like the bass work or the drum work, I felt like Beatles. Um,
That's actually, I think, a pretty fair analysis. I think that's actually a great observation. I would say this probably rivals more something like Pet Sounds, something more orchestral than Summer Days, Summer Nights. But no, I think you're spot on. Keep going.
and I will say my biggest issue with the album was actually the tracklist order. And I will say I made my own
Really?
version of the album. And
What?
we'll get to that kind of more near the end of the episode because I do want to like go through all the songs first and talk about them as a whole and then individually. But yeah,
I,
my biggest issue was like the track list, and most of it was the order. There was one song, and I'll kind of let you do some guessing here. There was one song I disliked to the point where if I were to redo this album, I would have left it off. And I'm curious if you know which one I'm talking about.
well, okay, that's pretty obvious. There's one song that is the outlier. Butcher's Tale, Western Front, 1914. I don't even know if there's actually like an historical reference in here. There's a few like specific details, so maybe there is.
No, there is. The story behind this song is it is it's an anti-war song set around World War One, and specifically the Western Front, which is why it has that kind of subtitle. The surprising thing about the song was it was a single in the U.S.
I did
And
see that on the Wikipedia,
but
which
the
is insane.
the reasoning for it is because they thought the song comparison could be like compared to at the time what was going on in Vietnam. So that makes sense. But the song, for those who have not heard it, it's entirely done on like a some type of pump organ, like a really old Victorian, I think, style pump organ.
Almost kind of
Which,
sounds like an accordion with like a grating sound.
yeah, and there's some songs. There's the last song on the most recent Pearl Jam album, Gigaton, River Cross. It's a song where Eddie Vedder, it's like the majority is him on a pump organ. Um, but there is extra instrumentation, like some bass, and some percussion throughout the song. Um, it wasn't one of my favorites on Gigaton, and in this song, I feel like the pump organ's like twice as annoying. Um, and then from my understanding, it was sung by not the. It was sung by someone that wasn't
The
like the lead
bassist.
singer, right? The bassist. Okay, yeah.
So
So
most of the vocals on this album is Colin Blunstone with the lead vocals, and then the second lead vocalist we'll say is Rod Argent, who does a lot of the songwriting as the piano player, and then Chris White. This was his song that he sung, but he does a lot of the writing as well.
yeah, because actually, just looking at the Wikipedia page now, the lead singer didn't write any of these songs. It looks like, which I did not know
No,
that
yeah.
until right now. So you're right. It's like the two of them being the main songwriters, but yeah, I think I also read he did like maybe Chris White. He did maybe backing vocals for another song. I don't know.
Some of the kind of the credits on this Wikipedia page seem not, I don't want to say inaccurate, but they seem a little difficult to kind of place what they're referring to. Like they said, Chris White did some lead vocals in Brief Candles, but so my understanding, I thought it was just Rod and Colin.
Well, yeah, I think I read it was like a verse, like maybe the third verse in the song. He does like some of the singing,
I
but
feel bad I didn't notice.
kind of with the Beach Boys. Well, other than Butcher's Tale, where you could definitely tell it's a different lead vocalist than the other songs. I feel like it's kind of like the Beach Boys, where if you had told me it was a different lead singer for some of the songs, I wouldn't have noticed.
It's
But in
because
this
they're
case,
British.
but yeah,
Just
but
kidding.
in this case, it is mostly one lead singer. He doesn't
Um,
write any of the vocal. Well,
no, Rod actually does. I would say a good amount of the lead vocals. Kind of when you look back and you count it up, he kind of does. But to me,
I
on
guess
those
you're right.
songs,
Oh, you're right.
but on those songs, Colin usually comes in for the chorus, and I think Colin's voice stands out.
But see, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you would have told me that a different lead singer sung "Brief Candles" and "Hung Up on a Dream" and "A Rose for Emily," and then the other lead singer did "Carousel" and did "This Will Be Our Year," I don't know if I would have been able to tell you that those were two different singers. And that's only because I've only heard. I mean, I've heard this album. I would say at least 10 times, or not more. But that said, it's kind of like the Beach Boys, where Chris kind of talked about this when we did that episode, where even nowadays, now he kind of knows, but like when he was first listening to them, it was hard for him to kind of be able to tell them apart, just their vocals.
Yeah, totally fair. I was the same way.
But Butcher's Tale, you could clearly tell it's a different vocalist. His vocals are not as strong. I didn't like the lyrics. There was a lot of lyrics about like flies that I just didn't like. And I get that the song has a specific purpose, and maybe for its purpose, it makes sense, but it's just not a song I want to like ever listen to again. It is like the Maggie McGill of the album. It's the I'm Bugged Up My Old Man of the album.
Come on.
I think it's just as bad. In fact,
don't discredit those other songs.
You're right. I'd rather listen to I'm Bugged Up My Old Man than this song.
Yeah, sure. I agree with that statement. But
Maggie McGill, I don't know.
It wasn't one I cared about. I don't think most people probably do. But when I saw it live, I did appreciate it a lot more. It was cool because the bass player, stepped forward and he sang it. And there was something about the way he was wearing like these dark sunglasses, and the lights from the stage or whatever were kind of shining in them, so he looked kind of weird. But it kind of added to kind of like maybe the eeriness of the song. And I do really like the Dropout, where he says, I can't stop shaking, my body won't stop shaking. I do actually really enjoy that part and the kind of how dramatic it is. But I mean, the bulk of the song is pretty throwaway, realistically.
Yeah, it's just the one song on the album that like doesn't fit. And like but again, it's not on purpose. It's not like it doesn't fit because it's like a totally different style of music. I mean, it is, but it's like meant to kind of be the story song, maybe in part try to make a statement, but it's just like, and maybe it's impressive live too, like you mentioned, because if you, I did some research, and like when they went and did these anniversary tours where they did the whole album, they had to locate a pump organ that was similar to the one that he used to record it, because he like when the band broke up, he like sold the one that he used on the album to record the song.
Oh wow.
So they had to like track down, because it's a very specific, like I said, this is like a Victorian pump organ, like it's got a specific name to it. So
and
so
not
that
to
part
stay on
is
this
kind of
song,
impressive.
That actually is a really cool factoid. Thank you for sharing that. And two more things real quick before we move on to this from this song. I will say, well, question for you. Do you think this song would be considered filler in your eyes? I know we don't always talk about things are filler and label things, but
I don't know. Over the years, I've decided that even if I song I want to consider filler, I've always kind of disliked that word, because it's like some people nowadays the word to use is like mid. The song is mid, and some people and artists don't like that word, but I almost like it better than filler, because filler to me makes it seem like it's a song that a lot of thought wasn't put into the song. But this song, clearly there was thought put into it, like the lyrics, the fact that they chose, the writer of the song to actually sing the song as opposed to another vocalist. Even the fact that it is just like basically one instrument the whole time, like that is thought put into it. So like, no, nowadays I consider a song like, what was that song we were just talking about from A Basement on the Hill when we did the Elliott Smith album?
Oh, Ostrich and Chirping.
Yeah, where it was like the producer's choice to add it on. It's probably something that wouldn't have been put on if it was up to Elliott's decision. Like that to me is filler. That to me is like, it's an interlude. Sometimes to me, an interlude, if it doesn't have to do with another song on the album, if it's like talking, that to me sometimes can be filler. Unless it really, like, we're talking about like the Killers album Sam's Town, exitlude and interlude, like interlude is like a 30-second little like song jingle, but it kind of has to do with like the themes of the album. They bring it back later for the last track on the album, Exlude. That to me isn't filler.
And there's
So
content to it. There's a good
yeah,
melody, piano.
yeah. So I wouldn't call the song filler, but I would just say like this song should have been a B-side. And the crazy part is the B-side of the song was this will be our year, which I will get into that later. But that's crazy that that was the B-side, not the single.
Yeah, and something too is live. I feel like he sung it a little stronger, despite being older. And I just want to throw out too something that at least I noticed is that a lot of the backup vocals on this album are fairly pitchy, and live it was actually kind of better because they kind of sung it more on tune. But okay, so that was your least favorite. So what is your favorite? I'm gonna take a gamble and say Care of Cell 44 is your favorite because it's just such a likable song, really. I guess that's not the greatest reasoning for guessing why you would like it, but as your favorite.
Well, I would say I'm glad we got like the worst because other than Butcher's Tale, I think all the other songs are enjoyable, even if I have some above others. Like to me, that's the only like bad song or like the only unenjoyable song on the album. If I had to go with favorite, that's not a bad guess because that's probably my second favorite. But I think it's got to be This Will Be Our Year, and maybe partially that's because I knew that song from the Foo Fighters cover, so I already knew the song before. But I think it's just like it's a classic song. It's to me, I think I even in my notes, I put it's a a classic top tier song, just undeniably a great song. Um, and that's even listening to the original. I'm not even talking about the Foo Fighters version, which I think is fantastic too. But like this original version, it's great. It's a little different than the Foo Fighters because one thing I noticed was the piano almost sounds like it's a little too slow with the percussion and vocals. I don't know if you've ever gotten that from the song. Like it almost seems like it's being played slightly slower.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned this. Now we can talk more about the fact that this version, or I mean, sorry, the original, This Will Be Our Year is a lot more kind of just kind of some bluesy elements. It's a lot more joyful and energetic. I remember though, I was doing a cover of it for Ellen, and I was like, "Hey Bryce, can you help me on this?" And I was telling him in particular, I was like, "Can you not do that ride thing in the beginning? Because it just sounds like this dude's going full blast on the ride cymbal above the rest of the band." But these days, I don't even notice it. It sounds completely fine. But I thought the same thing. I was like, "Why is this dude playing out of time?"
Well, yeah, is it the drummer playing at the time, or because I feel like the vocals are even following the drums? I feel like it's like the piano, and it's also too maybe the panning because there's a lot of panning on this album, which I will point more to in other songs, but like the piano was what sounded a little off, and it was only strictly like the like the timing of it, not like the sound of the piano or like the pitch. It was just like it felt like it was slightly dragging or something. I don't know.
You might be right about that. I just listened back real quick, and yeah, the piano, I mean, they're all quarter notes, but all those stabs feel just a little disjointed.
Yeah, but I mean that aside, like that was just something I noticed from the original that's obviously different than like the Foo Fighters cover. But like it's just like it's a wholesome song. Lyrically, it's wholesome. It's like, you know, um, it's optimistic. This will be our year. It took a long time to come. The verse melody is fantastic. The piano is fitting. Then you get the key change in the second verse, which key changes can kind of be hit or miss. Sometimes they can be like overblown and too much. And then sometimes you don't even notice when a song, those are sometimes the best ones is when you don't even notice. But
this one you could miss too. I think this one's flawless.
It's flawed. I mean, I do think I notice it, but it for some people who maybe aren't really paying attention, you can miss it for sure. But it's not even that. I think it's just so fitting. It's like it's fitting because like when he's singing the second verse, he's like he kind of goes off a little bit. Like, and I mean that in a good way, like in a slang term. Like he goes kind of like
he left no crumbs.
Yeah, like he like really really gets into it in the second verse. Like he's hitting higher notes and he's like sounding a little bit more passionate. Not that he wasn't before, but it's like the key change brought something out in the vocals even more so than like in the first verse. So I really appreciated that. And that's something I already knew from like the Foo Fighters cover, but like this original version, it sounds just as great.
So I gotta know now. And this is kind of an unfair question because you've just heard this version a few times, and I'm sure you'll get used to the piano being kind of a little off. But how do you like this compared to the Foo Fighters cover? And I know Mom, for example, prefers the Foo Fighters because it's prettier. But I actually really have taken a liking to this one because the energy, it feels so wholesome was a word you used, and this feels so innocent and just joyful.
Well, you're going to rightly hear it from Mom when she listens back to this episode. But I do agree with her that I like the Foo Fighters version better. And I think I know where she's coming from. I think the Foo Fighters version, the strings really puts it over the top for me and liking their version more. Like,
That's
especially at the end. I think Dave Grohl's voice really fits the song, but he sings it. He kind of sings it more laid back than he would an average Foo Fighter song, which is nice to hear from him. But then he does give it that kind of little rasp or bluesiness in that second verse after the key change. And then I will say this too. This is a song where, and I'm going to probably get this wrong, so you're going to have to correct me. It was not mixed in stereo originally because the horns were only recorded in mono. Is that correct? Or do I have it backwards?
So some of the I don't know why the Wikipedia page is so
some of the overdubs, right?
Yeah, it's like the horns were not recorded in stereo, so they could not so it's not on all versions, depending on if it's mono or stereo. So I take it the stereo version doesn't have horns then. Honestly, oh my gosh, the horns are almost unlistenable. They just
I totally agree.
walk over the song.
I'm so because I was kind of worried that you liked the horns version more, and because I only heard it once at I think 2 days ago when I was finishing my notes, I was like, oh, that's right. Tony told me I do have to go listen to the other version because the horns, and I did not like the horns at all.
2 thumbs down for the horns.
Yeah, like I'm really glad because both versions, because I listened to it on Apple and Spotify for some reason, and neither had the horns. Like I had to go to YouTube to get the horn version.
Right. And maybe while we're kind of talking the second time we're bringing up kind of mono stereo. So let me just throw this out there and then I want to hear your thoughts on it. Take the Beach Boys, for example. Most of their stereo mixes, I mean, Brian having only really one usable ear, always worked in mono, and at the time, mono is what they had. But you listen to the stereo versions and they're mixed really well. The biggest difference is the vocals. The vocals are still centered, but they just sound a little fuller because it's stereo. But the stereo mixes of this record are kind of strange. Not to jump around too far, get ahead. But like particular Beechwood Park, the vocals are panned just roughly maybe like 30% to one side, which is ridiculous. It just sounds off. It sounds weird. It sounds like they were maybe trying to take advantage of the stereo, abilities. But you don't hear that now, and for a good reason. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Rico, or anything.
So something I noticed, the one song to me where I noticed it the most when it came to like panning, when it came to like the way they recorded like the vocals, was on the song I Want Her, She Wants Me. I thought the vocals seemed like they were recorded so close. Like the second he starts singing, first of all, it's panned a little bit to the left, and like
it almost to the left.
But I don't know, like not all the way to the left. Like it wasn't like all the way. Like I kind of felt like it was like middle left, but they sounded so close. I can't even describe it. So close that it almost made me like shiver. Like I have this thing, like I don't like ASMR, which for people who don't know, it's like when people talk really close to the mic and like they whisper and they make tapping sounds and like this. Like some people like hearing that and fingernails. I don't, because it like makes like the hairs on my arm stand up, but like not in like a good way. Like I don't like it. And it almost was a problem when I first heard that song, I Want Her, She Wants Me, because like, I don't know, his vocals, like even though there's music going all around him, like, there's pretty bass heavy in the beginning of the song, like his vocals, like the way they recorded were like so, but not like loud, like in the last album we talked about, Jason Isbell, like with Death Wish. I don't know. It seemed like he was like literally, it sounded like he was right behind me, like singing into my ear.
Is it kind of like that Apple, I don't know what it's called, spatial audio, where if you turn around the audio moves
Kind
with
of,
you?
yeah. Except it didn't move, obviously, when I moved. But like, yeah, it seemed
It
like it
kind of
was like
tickles your
right
ear.
there.
I'm listening and
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying.
yeah. So I almost made me like dislike the. But there was other songs where like I noticed like an instrumentation on changes, like the bongos are like pan all the way to the right, and then like I think like the vocals are like all the way to the left. So there were a lot of very interesting production moments I definitely noted throughout the album. Most I enjoyed. Most I thought were cool. Most are things that I felt like the Beach Boys really honed in on later albums like Pet Sounds and stuff. So
The bongos on the right, the vocals on the left for changes, I think is actually a highlight of the um, stereo elements they explored.
yeah, and
That's a good call.
I can't tell you what Apple had. Like, I don't know if they had a mix. So and like you said, Wikipedia, it is kind of confusing the way it goes back and forth. So I honestly can't tell you if I heard that whole album in stereo or mono. I want to say I,
A mix, maybe.
I think I heard a mix because like at first, like for example, This Will Be Our Year for sure was not the horn version, which means it was the mono version.
Right, right.
But then there are some songs where I think it was the stereo version. But it didn't distract me enough because I do feel like it sounded coherent and it was cohesive. Maybe is the word I was looking for. Like it did sound like it didn't like no one song really sounded like it was like remastered differently. Like it all sounded like from the same time period.
Okay, that's a
Um,
good point.
but yeah, so to answer your question you asked me a while ago, like This Will Be Our Year is probably my favorite, but maybe it's just because I have a little bit more history with the song. But out of like the new songs I heard, so not This Will Be Our Year and not Time of the Season, my favorite was, as you guessed, was Carousel 44, the first song on the album.
Which is the longest, just under 4 minutes, which is pretty long for a song from the 60s.
Yeah, and it started off where I was like the very first couple seconds with that piano where I think it's a harpsichord specifically. And
Sounds like it.
harpsichords to me always like I don't always love the way they sound, especially if it's like throughout the whole song. And there's another song on this album. I'll have to look into my notes where there's a harpsichord and it got on my nerves a little bit too much. Like, oh, I think it was on it looks like it was on I Want Her, She Wants Me.
Is it? Let me look.
Um
Yeah, there is one. Yeah,
yeah, like
on the
yeah,
right
that
ear.
song, that one got annoying to me. But on this
Really?
song, but on Carousel, it starts off the album and I was like, okay, I don't love the first like 2 seconds. But then like the second like the rest of the song kicks in, like the vocal melody hooked me very early on. Like I I unless I like listen to the song, I probably won't be able to hit the notes exactly, but where he does like the da da the little like step up at the end of like every first line in the verse. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, like until they set you free again. Like
Yeah,
that
I
little thing.
really love that. Yeah, I love that vocally. I love the melody. And
I'm a
lately,
sucker for long melodies.
yeah, and I liked how it came at the end of every first line, so I kind of looked forward to it. I love that. I love the chord change that happens behind that melody as well. The bass when it comes in, it sounds very much like Paul McCartney to me, like in a good way. So that part reminded me of like the Beatles. I thought the drums were very peppy. They really fit the sound quite nicely. And then the structure of the song is interesting because you get like a acapella pre-chorus. Like it's just acapella. Like the music drops out before
Which
you get to the chorus.
Now, for me, when I first heard the record, I thought that it kind of took me by surprise. I really wasn't expecting it. But when I heard it, I didn't question it though, which I thought was kind of cool. It felt natural.
Yeah, I didn't really. There was not really a time where I think the second I heard it, instead of me going like, "Oh, that sounds weird," like they made it a cappella, I just was like, "Oh, Beach Boys." And maybe it's because the last album you gave me was the Beach Boys album, so maybe that's because that's currently where my mind is sitting right now. But like, yeah, I was just like, "Oh, this is Beach Boys." But then when the chorus hits, I'm like, "Oh, in my opinion, this is something I feel like the Beach Boys can't really do, which is like have like a really, really like strong." I don't want to say this because you and Chris are gonna hate me, but like
I'm already angry at you.
it's like it's a very powerful note. And I feel like sometimes with like the Beach Boys, they work so well with harmonies. They do that over like singing a really long note or really powerful note. Not that they can't, like not that any of the singers can't, but and also this song is to me more of like a full band song where sometimes the Beach Boys, especially on that last on Summer Days and Summer Nights, I feel like it was like them kind of some of the songs were like kind of like dissected because like there was moments where it was a cappella and like sometimes I feel like the instrumentation on Summer Nights, Summer Days, it wasn't always there for me. Like going back to that album, I'm listening to it for like the lyrics and the melodies, not so much the instrumentation. Even though there are moments on it, instrumentation I liked, like the guitar and bass, like on California Girls, but like this album, especially this first song, I feel like I already liked the instrumentation more. And like the high note he hits in the chorus of Carousel, the what's the line?
Feels
Like,
so good you're coming
you're
home
coming home,
soon.
coming home. Yeah, that note, I was like, wow, that was impressive. That sounded great. For some reason, it gave me like, okay, so this is the first time where I was like, maybe like a current day artist like Brendan Benson, maybe he gets some inspiration from the Zombies. Like I just felt that like chord change felt like something he would do.
Okay, I could see that.
Very much remind me of something like from his album, um, My Old Familiar Friends.
That's like the one with Go Nowhere on it, right? And a whole lot better.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
So it gave me Brendan Benson vibes, but like obviously that he took inspiration from. Um, and then I think the most interesting part of the song, besides the acapella pre-chorus, was just like the whole song is like written about like it's like the lead singer is like, well, obviously the lead singer didn't write the song, but the writer of the song, like he's like writing a letter to someone like in jail, or not in jail, but like, is it jail or is it maybe like a institute, something like, right? Like, isn't that?
I imagine. I always think about it like a jail. I guess it doesn't really say too much. Well, it says, and then you can tell me about your prison stay.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess technically, yeah, jail. So and like, I also wanted to ask you, like, is there like a obviously care of cell sounds like the word carousel, but it's care of cell being like a prison cell, which is why it's the other reason why it's about someone stay in prison. But like, is there a like I know I read something about 44, like the meaning of it. Let's see if I can look.
They wanted to call it Care of Cell 69.
Well, yeah, and then that was like too jokey. But like I was like maybe like the cell number is like 44, like that was like
Right.
my guess. And then I was wondering too, like, well, maybe like it was take 44, but then when I read it, it was the song was done in 4 takes. So I was like, oh, so definitely not 44 takes. I'm like, well, maybe they did 44 because it was like 4 takes of the song.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you think there's any reason behind it sounding like the word carousel, or that was just because it could have just been called Cell 44, but it's Carousel 44.
That is a really good point. I've never actually questioned it. I mean, of course, anytime I've talked about the song, it's hard to not hear it as Carousel. But if I were to just kind of make a quick guess, maybe just throwing out some thoughts. So there's some lines like, writing this letter, hope you're okay, sent to the room you used to stay in every Sunday. And it almost maybe sounds like they could be hinting that this is not the first time this person has been to the prison stay. Maybe it's kind of like a loop. They're talking about, oh, we'll meet again, and it'll be so nice when you're home. So maybe a carousel like it's on repeat, but that's a pretty far stretch. Um, so I don't know. I don't really know, but it is interesting, and it does leave some room for interpretation there.
Yeah,
But
it could have been entirely like coincidence that like it carousel sounds like carousel, and
and
maybe
I
they
mean,
wanted to just go with that.
and when you I just read this. I mean, I think I've read it before, but I forgot that the album is actually incorrectly spelt. Odyssey, it's spelled with an
Yeah,
E for the first Y. And I guess the reason was because the artwork was typoed, and so they just kind of acted like it was
they try to
intentional.
play it off, yeah, like they did on purpose. But
And
yeah,
not to I don't mean this at all, anything negative towards the band, but who knows what else maybe they kind of just were like, yeah, we did that. Yeah, we
yeah.
totally named it Carousel because it sounded like that.
Well, I
Who
also thought
knows?
too the reason why when I first heard it and I was like getting the impression it was like someone in prison, I almost thought maybe carousel that the word care had to do with like mental health, which is why I maybe thought it was a mental
Oh
institution.
yeah.
But then you're right, they do say prison. But then maybe some people think of like a mental um institution as a sort of prison. So I don't know, maybe we're reading too much into this, or like you said, maybe it's just very coincidental, but I like that it's thought provoking, even if there isn't a huge meaning behind it. You know,
Yeah.
because not every because another thing with this album, comparing it to the Beach Boys, "Summer Day, Summer Nights," that like half of the songs we kind of talked about were kind of just like about amusement parks or Salt Lake City or California Girls, like. Right, there wasn't a whole. Some of the songs didn't have a ton of meaning, like something like God Only Knows. And there are some songs on this album that I do think lyrically are kind of more straightforward, that weren't as exciting, like um I Want Her, She Wants Me,
Stop.
or maybe After He's Gone.
Now,
Um
now you're just fighting.
no, I'm just talking about, I'm not even talking about like the music, and I'm not saying I didn't enjoy those songs, I did, but like I I don't know, I think there's other songs on this album like Carousel that are more interesting lyrically, like Brief Candles, or like um Time of the Season, or like Beechwood Park.
I do see what you're saying. And okay, I guess yeah. I guess maybe I'm looking a little too far into what you said. You're saying that are more straightforward. So maybe let's dive into I Want Her, She Wants Me. This is a personal favorite of mine. And there's a lot of cool things going for it. I hope you noticed the delay on the bass, which was pretty cool. You don't hear that too much. Um,
I did
but
notice the delay, but I did mention I liked the way the bass sounded.
okay, nice. And I think that I want to hear your thoughts. But I like the lyrical idea of I close my eyes, I sleep so easy. There's nothing on my mind. Life seems kind, or something, whatever. I want her, she wants me. The joy of just being in love and just being happy. His life is calm. Like I think that is maybe it is straightforward, but I think that's a concept that isn't often explored, and I think it's done well.
It is. I just like, maybe I just don't love that like the lyric they chose to name the song after is "I want her, she wants me." Like, I don't know, because there are better lines in the song, like the ones you pointed out. Um, but yeah, I feel like the chorus of the song is just a little too simple lyrically. You know?
Yeah, it's a little disconnected. I won't lie.
And I'm not even like trying to compare it to, like, we just talked about Jason Isbell for like almost 2 hours, and like his song, every single song is like so like packed, every line, and it's like they're more storytelling songs, and for the most part these songs aren't that, but like, and maybe too, like the outro is just like the core, like the title song over and over and over. um I'm just saying I don't think it's the most like interesting song lyrically. um but I do like the opening line, "I close my eyes and soon I'm feeling sleepy, I sleep so easy." Like, it does paint some nice pictures, you know but it's just
Right.
and it is one of those songs, like it reminds me of like a Beatles song where they're talking about like a first love, kind of like puppy love, kind of.
Hmm.
So so in that sense, I do appreciate it like that, but I do consider it like a kind of an older, by older I mean like an earlier Beatles song where I don't read too much into it lyrically. Um, but that said, I liked the chorus, how like the drums and guitars had kind of like the syncopation, like it kind of like what I'm talking about, like
Yeah, it's a lot more like the energy is really focused, if that
yeah, it
makes
goes from
sense.
this kind of straightforward kind of rhythm to
Kind of a
this,
bounce.
yeah. So I did really enjoy that about the song. This song and Friends of Mine reminded me, and you're not going to get this because the Spoon album I gave you was not indicative of Spoon's normal sound. But if you listen to like Spoon's earlier albums, they have a lot of songs that kind of reminded me of I Want Her, She Wants Me, and Friends of Mine, where they're kind of just like these
Really?
60s sounding kind of upbeat, simple rock songs, but with like a solid groove. Yeah. So, which is
Okay.
why down the road I might give you an older Spoon album because I kind of felt like, oh, maybe Spoon, Britt Daniels, maybe he got inspiration from some of these zombie songs.
Interesting. Okay, and I do think a lot of these songs, like you mentioned, Care of Self 44, kind of maybe thinking of a Benson move there. I do think a lot of these songs like really hold up well. Even some of the simpler ones, like Friends of Mine is really straightforward too. I keep wanting to say that these are all favorites of mine, but I just love the whole album. They're all favorites of mine. Was Friends of Mine one that you were drawn to?
And that one had to grow on me a little bit. I kind of thought, well, I don't know, because it comes after Butcher's Tale, which I'm like, okay, I'm glad we get like another normal song.
Fair.
But then, it's the second to last song, and it's preceded by Time of the Season. Which even if I didn't know that song before, like that song definitely, that song, we'll maybe get to that song a little bit later. That song has like, almost a different vibe than the rest of the album. It leans way more on the psychedelic kind of sound, which you do get from some of the other songs on the album, like Beechwood Park. But, like Friends of Mine is more straightforward. It's like another kind of upbeat tempo song, which I think is nice, especially after the previous song.
It kind of has a guitar solo.
It kind of does. Yeah, I did say I like the guitar instrumental. It definitely, okay, so that guitar solo instrumental you're talking about, I thought it reminded me of the Byrds, which then of course reminds me of Tom Petty. It has that kind of like 12-string guitar sound, jangly kind of
Super
sound.
bright, yeah.
Yeah, so it gave me the, kind of Byrds and Petty sound.
Cool.
Um, and I did kind of think it sounded like a more of a basic Beatles song, but I did like the chorus of the song more than the verse. And that's just because of like the chord changes that are happening in the chorus and also the way that they pair nicely with the backing vocals. And I thought it ended in a very kind of unusual way because like he's singing about friends of his, and like as the song goes on, the backing vocals and I believe the chorus, they're singing people's names. Like he'll sing "They are friends of mine," and the backing vocals are saying like Joyce, Terry, Paul, and Molly. And then like it ends with just like them naming these names again. Um, and I thought that was, and I didn't really do too much research. I'm kind of looking into it right now, and it seems like the names Gene and Jim that are mentioned during one of the choruses, I guess were in reference to the founding members of the band The Kinks. I
Oh,
guess it's
interesting.
Jim Rodford and bassist. Um, oh no, Jim Rodford is the bassist, I think, and then um, I don't know my research. I'm sorry.
They don't mention like Ray or anything. I don't know, like the main guy of it.
No, I guess. Oh, I guess Jim was married to Gene. They were married for
Oh,
56 years.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Um, so yeah. So it makes me wonder then if all the other people that they mention are people they knew, like actual friends. So
And how many of them have lasted too?
yeah. So, um, Yeah, it's a feel good song, and like I said, I really did find it would have been not as interesting if they weren't naming the names. I will say that kind of made me enjoy the song more, especially because I didn't really catch it the first time. Because like as the song's going on, maybe I'm not paying as much attention because I'm just kind of like tapping my head and my foot, and I'm just kind of like zoning out a little bit. But then like when I was like reading the lyrics, I was like, oh, like wow, I was missing all these names that they were saying, you know. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
So
I did really I enjoyed that about the song a lot. Even if I do think the song like it's not in my top five, but um, I do enjoy the song. I probably will. I don't. Okay, I like it lyrically better than I Want Her, She Wants Me, but I do think the music is not as solid, not as interesting as I Want Her, She Wants Me.
yeah, I could see that. I think I Want Her, She Wants Me is like the chord progression and the rhythms are a little more engaging. So we've kind of talked about some of the simpler songs. And we talked about your favorites. So here's kind of a fun question here. Did any of these songs kind of blow your mind with either like creativity, delivery? I know you mentioned that, as opposed to the Beach Boys, where it's kind of like here's music and then here's the vocals on top. Even if they're great independently and together, this feels like a band. Was there any sort of like explosive moments for you, or things that caught you off guard?
Well, I mean, I think like I mentioned before, Carousel 44 that blew me away by like like that set the pace really well for the album because I was like, okay, now I know I'm gonna expect Beach Boy type harmonies, and I'm gonna expect vocals that are that powerful, even though I feel like they are the most powerful in that song. At least like when I'm talking about just lead standalone vocals, not harmonies or backing
Right.
vocals. Um, I will say the next one that kind of maybe not blew my mind, but like the next one that was like, whoa, was probably Beechwood Park. If I was to guess, this is probably one of your favorites too, even though I know you said that for like all of them. But like it has such a weird intro. Like the guitar, not only does the guitar have like I'm sure you can tell me the exact effect, it has a very strange sound to it. And then even more so, the notes that the guitarist is playing are very like I was not expecting it.
Yeah, and first off, you're right. This is one of the ones that really got me into the album. And now looking back, it might not be one I always go back to. But enough about that. Yeah, the guitar with the modulation on it is very watery. It's kind of almost a uncomfortable texture, kind of a little bit, I would almost say. But please go on before I go on too long.
Yeah. So well, yeah, because and then there's the part too where his vocals have like a tremolo effect to him as well.
Yes, yes.
And my favorite part of the song is my absolute favorite part, and it might well, I don't know, Carousel probably wins it for me when it comes to like songs I haven't heard on this album for favorite moments, but like the part in Beechwood Park, I don't know if you can consider the chorus, but the part where they sing all roads in my mind take me back in my mind. I absolutely love that melody. The
Such a powerful.
roads in my mind take me back in my mind. Like just that little climb up. It's kind of like um what he does in Carousel, but I don't know, it's just so dreamy and it's just like the chord changes behind it too. I love. And then the second time after they do it, there's this like little walk down progression too that I really liked in the music. I like how the drums are kind of like jazzy throughout the whole song. I think the organ is just a nice addition to kind of fill out the overall sound. Um, but yeah, that vocal melody in that chorus is probably my favorite on the whole album. And I like the lyrics a lot too. I like um I really like I love a good lyric that's about the weather. I have a lot of weather
Right.
lyrics in my own songs. So hearing about like the summer rain and then like him describing like the feeling of the air after the rain, I thought was very descriptive and painted a really good picture in my mind. No no pun intended. But yeah, it was, even though it's like, so it's a song where it's like I might not be in the mood for it all the time because it does have that really weird guitar sound and it is a little bit slower. It's not as upbeat as some of these other songs, but that I found the overall song of Beechwood Park to be very impressive. It makes you almost wish there was more kind of those psychedelic moments in during some of the other songs on the album.
Those are some great points, actually. Talk about the song being impressive, and as we're kind of talking about it, and I'm kind of running through the sections, this song almost shouldn't work as well as it does, because it's, you know, the sections, they connect really well, and they kind of change pretty suddenly. For some reason, the part that we both really love, the All Roads in My Mind, which that is one of the highlights on the album for me, you know, as far as moments go. It kind of reminds me of a Brad thing, kind of. I'm not sure if you feel that too, but
Like the melody or like the harmonies.
just, I don't know, maybe like the melody with the chords, kind of, you know, some of those more emotional Brad moments, maybe on Shame or Welcome to Discovery.
I can see that, and I guess I can see the whole song kind of being like Brad, not the psychedelic part, but just like the drums, I guess, and you know, the guitars, maybe something like Stone would do, and so I could see the whole song being a little bit like Brad, which is a band that we're going to be doing a whole episode next month.
I feel like we've been talking about Brad almost every episode. They're really hyping up this Brad, this Brad cast.
As we should, because they're a band that deserves more recognition. They have their new album coming out. Rest in peace, Sean Smith. I'm excited for the episode and album. But yeah, Beechwood Park, I definitely, I can see some Brad now in it. The other, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I want to hear what you're going to say.
Well, I was going to say that, so I'm actually kind of surprised. You've been pointing out a lot of the psychedelic elements, and I do love some psychedelic elements, but I wouldn't say it's like one of the, like, I don't go out of my way to listen to psychedelic stuff normally, but it seems like that kind of actually interests you. And I would say actually probably the most psychedelic song would probably be Hung Up on a Dream. So I'm just kind of curious, you know, how that song fares with you.
I actually didn't see that one as psychedelic. I did mention that the song at times seemed all over the place. When I first heard the song, I was like, okay, there's a lot of piano on this album. Like, I was like, more piano than I was expecting for some reason, which is not a bad thing because I love me some piano. And I really like the title of the song because, like, Hung Up on a Dream, like, I feel like that's really relatable. Any song, I mean, there's a Tom Petty song called Hung Up and Overdue, which also kind of is like, he might as, you know, it's very much kind of, the songs are kind of similar in that sense, in that they're kind of about like feeling like you're well, the Tom Petty song, he's kind of like singing about how like he feels like he finally like needs to get a chance because they're hung up and over. The lyric is, we're overdue for a dream come true. And in this song, I feel like it's kind of similar. Like, it's like this narrator's like, they're kind of stuck on this one dream. They're stuck on this one thing. And it was, I noticed the vocals were kind of, again, panned more to the right. They felt really smooth though. They had some like reverb or something to them that made them seem very grand, that I noted. Just the overall, like, the format of the song was weird because like there was a guitar solo like really early on, which is why I kind of said the song feels like all over the place.
And this album, I think, I mean, being a guitarist, I wish I had a little more guitar, but the sparse guitar moments are pretty good though. But I do agree, it's kind of early on for a solo.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little all over the place, but like there's moments where the guitar and piano swell up really nice, and the organ. There's that part where there's like a 2-note repetition that kind of goes back and forth. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I like that part. And I thought the drums were nice. They felt a little bit more active in the song than some of the others.
A lot of builds.
It was just, this one, I think would grow me more over time because I just felt like so there's 3 songs on this album. Well, okay, so there's 2 other songs on this album that do this kind of like back and forth thing where it's like the verses are more subdued and then all of a sudden the chorus is really in your face. And I'm talking about Brief Candles, and I'm talking about Maybe After He's Gone.
Yep.
One of them I liked way more than the other, and we'll get to that in a second. I feel like Hung Up on a Dream is like the middle ground. Like it's instead of doing it so abruptly, it's trying to be more organic. But in that way, it almost seemed like it was reaching for too much. So I don't, but I also just didn't get the psychedelic feel about it as much. But I mean, I still enjoy the song. I definitely enjoyed it over some other songs. But it's kind of like, sorry, it's got you off, but it's sort of like Friends of Mine, where I feel like it's more. There's a lot more going on with this song than Friends of Mine, but Friends of Mine is more catchy, which is maybe why I like it more. If that makes sense.
I definitely will say that this song was a grower. It actually was like maybe my least favorite. No, well, okay, not my least favorite, Butcher's Tale, but it wasn't one of my top songs. But I do like it a lot. But I think the lyrics are part of why I think it's very psychedelic. You know, I stood astounded, staring hard at men with flowers resting in their hair. Talk about a sweet vibration filling the air. You know, there's kind of a lot of I mean, I'm not saying the song's about acid, but there's a lot of songs about acid that kind of seem similar in their lyrics. And I don't know anything about the zombies, really. I don't know that much, so I'm not trying to label that on the song. But that and these kind of, all these moving parts in the music, I don't know. I always see it a little bit of psychedelic, but I think that's interesting that you're actually almost comparing it to Friends of Mine, which I would put on the total opposite spectrum, opposite side.
Well, I didn't mean to compare. I just meant like, I meant to say like I like a song like Friends of Mine better because I can just hook onto it easier than Hung Up on a Dream.
Gotcha.
Hung Up on a Dream definitely it fits more of like maybe After He's Gone and Beachwood Park in that sense. Not Beachwood Park. Brief Candles and Maybe After He's Gone.
So why don't we dive into those? Because you mentioned
yes. I think they're similar. But there's definitely one I like more than the other. Can you guess which one I like more out of the two?
Brief Candles.
That is correct.
Yes. Those two are probably the two most similar songs on the album.
The reason why I think Brief Candle works better for two reasons. One, maybe After He's Gone, it starts with that, like, is it acoustic guitar?
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts with that, like, kind of really dark, like, somber acoustic guitar, which I really liked. And it felt like it was setting up the atmosphere of the verse. But then when the chorus hits, I kind of was taken back a little bit because I was kind of like, I wanted more of that other sound. I don't want this like bright, catchy chorus. And it is very catchy. It gets stuck in my head randomly throughout the day. But like it goes from this like, I don't know what band it sounds like. But
the chorus?
Like, no, the verse. Like the verse has like, I don't know, like it reminds me, like the closest thing I can think of is like the walk, like I don't know, it reminds me of like Hotel California, just like the song. Not like the Eagles, like in general, just like that kind of, I don't know, almost like Western sounding acoustic guitar. I don't know, it sounds really cool. But then like the chorus is like the more like the Beatles. And even though it has a great like positive vibe, I just think the juxtaposition was too much for me. And there were things that, I mean, the piano I thought was really cool. And I thought the bass groove and the drums were really tight. And I did really enjoy the bridge. And it reminded me of more of like the experimental side of the Beatles. And I like how it goes back into the intro. But yeah, it just like, it felt like two different songs where Brief Candles felt like it was like a fake out, but in the best way possible, because when the song starts, I thought it was going to be a repeat of A Rose for Emily, which I'll just say right now, Rose for Emily was a little disappointing to me because I felt like the song could have gone somewhere else. A Rose for Emily is one of the reasons I don't love it is because of the placement. I don't think it should have been the second song.
Agreed.
And also just like I said, it doesn't go as many places as the rest. I mean, it's mostly just piano and vocals, right? That said,
I know we're going on a tangent with it, but I got to throw in. This is Mom really likes A Rose for Emily.
I like it. Like it. I actually, it reminds me of like something off Billy Joel's first album, which I know is one of the albums of his you're not as familiar with.
Cold Spring Harbor.
Yeah, just like the overall chord progression reminds me of something from Cold Spring Harbor. Some of the songs that weren't like the singles, like, and I do have an appreciation a lot for that part of Billy Joel's discography, but it just felt like the song should have blossomed, no pun intended, into something else, and it just doesn't. But that said, I do find it's a very sad song, like lyrically. I'm surprised Mom likes it that much because of that.
Right.
But I do like that it is kind of more somber.
I do have to flex. I do have the Rose for Emily single on pink vinyl.
Oh, nice.
But
the
okay,
B-side?
I think it's This Will Be Our Year. I'm pretty sure.
Why is it the B-side to every single on this album?
I don't know.
It's because the band really wanted to push that as a single, but the record label no.
So that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, so A Rose for Emily's not a bad song, but it's just there's not a lot for me to say about it other than like it reminds me of early Billy Joel. But
it's my second least favorite after Butcher's Tale.
Yeah, I kind of like early Billy Joel better than the song. But that said, going back to Brief Candles, it starts off sounding like it's going to be A Rose for Emily, but then it fakes you out to this really catchy, even catchier than the chorus of Maybe After He's Gone, where I love the bass line. The bass line is like, again, reminds me of Paul McCartney, but it's probably my favorite bass work on the whole album. And I love how upfront the vocals are. And I love that there's like a mystery again to the lyrics, kind of like, what was the other song where the lyrics were kind of a mystery? Well, I mean, kind of like Carousel, like the title Carousel, kind of like the naming of the friends and friends of mine. I found the brief candle. Like, what does brief candles mean? Like, what is like? It's like a phrase that I don't think was like something people said a lot. So like, I was just very intrigued by. I was like, is it they singing brief candles? Because like the chorus and the verses are like the intro of the song was brief, and then I was like, is it like something to do with like birthday? But then I was like, is it like a metaphor for like candles burn out quick? Like a birthday candle, like that burns out quick. Obviously not if you get like a big candle from like Bed Bath & Beyond's, obviously it won't burn out quick. But I just found a fascinating title and premise for a song. I thought I liked the piano playing better on this song than A Rose for Emily. I preferred the back and forth again better than Maybe After He's Gone. And I also noticed like I liked how the song like there's the pronouns change in the first and second verse and chorus.
Different perspective.
Yeah. And it had a weird little instrumental bridge too that I thought was just made the song more interesting. So yeah, I Brief Candles is up there with like I don't like it as much as a Carousel, but it's up there with like Beechwood Park, where I feel like it's a really interesting moment of the song, where I would put like Maybe After He's Gone more with like I want her, she wants me.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, I think once again you had great observations for all of these songs, but I think you made a great analysis here. Kind of maybe to just reiterate kind of what you said. I like that Brief Candles. It is like Maybe After He's Gone, but it hangs out in the two sections longer. Maybe After He's Gone's a little too back and forth, like you don't know what TV station you want on. But Brief Candles kind of feels like two different sections that somehow really work together. And I never really thought about comparing it to Rose for Emily, but I see where you're going from with that. And frankly, it's a lot less archaic than A Rose for Emily. And lyrically, I do think it's one of the best. It's kind of like Care of Cell 44, where there's a narrative, but in Care of Cell 44, they talk more about specific things in there, but you're kind of just missing the whole why. Like, what happened? What's the setup? Where, like, Brief Candles, they give you, like, all these details, but you're like, but what is the actual thing that's happening? Like, I don't know. Like you said, it's a lot of thought-provoking stuff. Yeah, I mean, so I think we've been over most of these songs here. I think the only one we haven't is one of the outliers. This one's a more successful outlier, in my opinion. Butcher's Tale being kind of a clunker. Sorry. And then the last song, Changes. I have no idea what you're going to say about this one.
Um, I think it's
That
my
wasn't a good start.
I think it's my second least favorite.
Okay.
Changes. I don't know. First of all, I it starts off with what I believe is a mellotron,
I
and
think so.
that sounded really cool. And I was like, "Where's this song going to go?" And then it goes into this kind of like hippie vibe. Like I don't want to say psychedelic, but kind of hippie. Like the bongos. It was kind of just a cappella too, right? Like the bongos and then like the vocals.
Yeah, it was like
Uh
group vocals with minimal percussion.
yeah, there are I think there are some piano notes that I mentioned in my notes that I wrote. But um yeah, I just there wasn't a lot of the song that I liked. The lyrics, the reason maybe I thought it was hippies because I feel like the lyrics were more about describing things. They were more descriptive, but they were just more for like imagery sake.
Yeah, they're kind of all over the place, really.
Yeah, and like I don't know, like the harmonies here were more like not goofy, but like I don't know, in other songs like on Carousel, on maybe after pretty much on every other song except for like Butcher's Tale, I thought the harmonies were stronger. This song just felt like I don't know, it just felt weaker. It was a nice change of pace, I will say, especially after like its placement on the album isn't really was a concern of mine. It's just the song itself. I didn't find it to be too intriguing.
I mean, I think that's a pretty fair statement there. Um, I do think it is refreshing, and I actually will kind of disagree. I think the harmonies are done really nicely, but I think it's just lyrically it's too loose. Musically, it's kind of all over the place. I will appreciate that Butcher's Tale at least has like an objective. It feels like it's going somewhere intentionally. Where Changes kind of just feels like here's some cool musical sections we came up with. Let's put them together. Which sometimes that works great. Sometimes it's a little hit or miss, kind of like this. Um, and I don't know if you have anything else to say about the song, but oh, there's still one more song. I was going to ask you about the how you would order the album, but there's still one more song.
You mean the biggest song from the album?
Yes.
Yeah, so Time of the Season's obviously the one I knew before. I think Mom likes it a lot, right? Maybe
Well, who doesn't? No,
yeah,
Lita
but
really likes it too.
yeah, I just remember hearing it a lot growing up. Not like a lot, but like enough to like be totally familiar with the song. Um, it is so okay. Then this is gonna lead into like my final thing about the album, which is the track list order. Here's what I think is I don't think of it as a great closer track. I think here's what I think. I think it should have been the first single, and instead it ended up being like I think the last single because it ended up being like a surprise single in the US. I think the album should start with it. You start with Time of the Season because ending with like the psychedelic number doesn't seem right, but beginning with it seems better to me. The song itself, I like for the most part. I don't. The only thing I really don't like about the song, it's like the weird like that noise
Yeah, you're not a fan
right
of that.
right before like the percussion, like the really reverb percussion,
I think I
like the
remember
snaps,
on
like but
the
that that noise.
yeah.
Yeah, what song on the Incubus album does he do that?
I kept trying to bring that up. I kept cutting you off. I'm sorry. But on Dig he does that, and I remember that you specifically said you didn't like that.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't like that in the song either, and it happens like the whole time, so I don't love that. But
At
I mean,
least you're consistent.
the chorus is great. I mean, you have to have some balls to like make your hook of the chorus be totally a cappella, but it works so well. I think probably the strongest harmonies in the whole album. It's just the way they arranged that I think are so good too. The organ solo goes hard both times. Like it closing on it isn't terrible because I think the organ solo helps it. But I don't know.
Jamming
It
out.
just yeah, it I just feel like it could so I think it should start the album because I feel like it's just a better album opener. Not that it's a better album opener than Carousel, because I think Carousel is a great album opener. But my problem with the album was it's just it like doesn't flow as well as it should. So here's what I would do: start with Time of the Season, make it the first single. Then you follow with Brief Candles, because you're kind of led to believe you're going to get a Rose for Emily type song, which is not a good second song. But then you get kind of a back and forth, upbeat kind of song. And even though it's not psychedelic, because it goes back and forth a lot, it kind of, I feel like, has some more ties in that kind of, non-classic rock sound. It feels more like 68 than, like a song like, Friends of Mine. So I would go Time of the Season, Brief Candles. Then I would go with Maybe After He's Gone. Because
Really? Well, you just talked about how similar they were. Well, we both did.
But I didn't say that they were bad back and forth. I think, because here's what, you start with Time of Season, which kind of is more in that like mysterious kind of sound. Brief Candles kind of has more of an upbeat. But then the third song, you think you're going to kind of go into a slowdown for the album with the beginning of the acoustic guitar, Maybe After He's Gone. But I think I'd rather have the two songs similar together for some reason. I think if you have them too far apart, I just go like they're. It's almost like the Jason Isbell album. Like it's like Volunteer and Vestavia Hills. Like if they were apart, I don't know. I think it makes the album. I almost prefer that they're together on the album because it's like sometimes having songs sound similar back to back isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think it makes the rest of the album flow because then 4, I go Beechwood Park. That to me is where that. Huh?
Keep that one word initially is.
Yeah, because it's a good fourth song. It's like a song where you want to slow down a little bit because it's definitely not like a fast song. Then you get Hung Up on a Dream because then I want it to kind of pick up, but kind of like you don't know where you're going. And in my mind, that's kind of where like the first side ends.
On Hung Up on a Dream.
Yeah, because then you'd open side 2 with Carousel 44.
Okay.
Then you kind of get things, more steady again, more up tempo, right? Then 7, you go I Want Her, She Wants Me because it's just a solid song.
I can hear that happening.
Good follow up after Carousel, nothing, Then 8, then we go A Rose for Emily because then we want to kind of want a little bit of a slowdown. And I like the song enough to keep it on the album. I just think it makes a bad second song. But for an 8th song, it's fine. Especially because it's almost like an interlude. And here's what I do. You go Rose from Emily to Changes. Mostly because it's such a change from A Rose for Emily. But they're similar in the sense that they're like lacking like full instrumentation. Rose for Emily is like just piano, and then Changes is just like bongos and vocals. So you kind of get like the weird part of the album right here in song 8 and 9. Follow those up with Friends of Mine, which is a solid second to last song. Kind of make the album go upbeat again. And then you end it with This Will Be Our Year because I cannot think of that as anything but a closing track. Why they thought to put it in the middle of the album makes zero sense. I don't understand it. Like, it is a last song. I don't understand why they went in the middle. Great last song. That's how the album ends. I totally leave out Butcher's Tale. It does not belong on the album. It's a B-side. And I will say this. Looking on the Wikipedia page, looking at some of these like bonus track versions, some of these re-releases, it looks like there's a ton of other songs. A song called I'll Call You Mine, She Loves Me the Way They Love Her, Imagine the Swan. Like a ton of these. I'm sure I don't know if you've heard these, but I'm sure some of these songs have to be better than Butcher's Tale. Pick the best one from that lot of bonus songs, put it on the album. Then you got a great 12 song album that is sequenced way better than it originally was.
Okay, so when I start selling my Patterson time machines, I'm going to give you a free one, and you're going to go back in time and apply this track listing, because that actually, in theory, sounds like a perfect order, perfect sequencing for this album.
Yeah, because
I'm kind of blown away. You just told me this in front of me. Wow.
Yeah,
so make this on Spotify if you haven't already, and go ahead and link it to me, and I will give this a listen.
Yeah, I'll link it to you. Because I have it on Apple Music, but I can make it on. I'll make it on Spotify and send it to you. Yeah, because I just think it flows smoother. I think some of the songs like Brief Candles and Maybe After She's Gone should be together, and a song like A Rose for Emily and Changes should be together. The moods kind of go better. Like nothing seems like totally out of place. And if someone says, "Oh, Carousel's too good of an opener to put anywhere else," I totally kind of understand because I think Carousel could go perfect in the one slot, but I also think it's a perfect middle song to kind of start your side B.
And you could probably, I mean, I understand that you have everything, you have it all sequenced for a reason, but you could probably swap time of the season with Care of Self for which side it would open in your
You
scenario.
kind of could, but I don't know. Something
Not
about time of the
perfect,
season, something about time of the season just screams opener to me.
It's weird to think about as an opener. It's more weird to
'Cause
think about it as a closer, though.
Yeah, because it seems like it would be a good concert opener.
No,
Like, I
that's a
don't
good
know.
concert closer.
Well, yeah, because it's like the biggest
Jam
song.
out, extend it.
But I don't know, like an album. Think about like a concert opener. Like people like lose their mind. Like, oh my god, they're you see what I'm saying?
It's a little mysterious too when you enter. You build the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's
So,
just
okay.
it's a more interesting opener, and it shows off their harmonies right away, but it also shows off their instrumental skills with like the soloing. And then like, yeah, Brief Candles kind of shows you like their songwriting ability. Same with Maybe After He's Gone. Then you get psychedelic with like the next two songs. Then you go back into like, here's a kind of straightforward pop song with Carousel and I Want Her, She Wants Me. Then you go back into the weird songwriting kind of with Rose for Emily and Changes, kind of more stripped back. Then you kind of pump it up again with Friends of Mine because it's an upbeat song. And then you end with Over Here, which I think is a perfect closing song.
Yeah, I will say putting Changes After Rose to Emily is a bold choice, but that's actually like kind of genius though. And I feel like, let me see, both of those, well, okay, Rose for Emily short Changes is like a whole minute longer, but I don't know, that somehow seems like it would actually flow very nicely.
And have you heard any of those other bonus songs?
I'm going to be completely honest, I haven't. I think part of why is because there's like 50 of them and most of them are just like mono versions or like backing tracks, but I really should considering how much I love this album. I will go ahead and dive into these songs and see what's up with it. I'll let you know if any of them are good.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think if you just want a 12-song album like the original, I definitely think I would assume almost all of those bonus songs have to be better than Butcher's Tale, or at least more likable. There might be some people out there who that's like one of their favorites from the album, but I just think it's not an easy likable song. It's a song that you might like it just because of what the song's about, or you maybe really love the pump organ. But yeah, overall, I was really impressed. Like I said, I kind of think I enjoyed it more than Summer Days and Summer Nights. I thought
I do prefer it over Summer Days and Summer Nights. And for those who don't know, I'm a huge Beach Boys fan, and I love that album too. But I think Odessey and Oracle's really, really special. I think it's quite amazing, and especially I think these songs really hold up well today as well. Production, not so much, but as far as the songwritings, they still sound fresh, in my ears at least.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you gave me this album. I really enjoyed it, even if I would have make some changes. And this is just a personal taste. I think the original album, the way it's structured, is totally fine. I'm not saying mine is better. I just for my liking.
It is. Even I'm saying it is better.
So, but yeah, and I'm actually curious to ask Chris if he knows if he likes the Zombies Like This album because it should be right up his alley.
Yeah, he's. I was kind of surprised how much he's into the psychedelic approaches to things.
So yeah, definitely let us know, anyone listening, if they know this album. Give us your thoughts. If not, listen to the album. Let us know. Would you make the same track list changes that I did? Would you keep it the same? And then yeah, I think we had a great month when it came down for albums. Next week, Tony, we are tackling your very own album, Good Cause.
Yes, it has been. I mean, I think it's been just right over a year since it came out, right?
Well, no, not yet. I think it came out.
Oh no,
I think it came out near the end of July of last year. But
okay,
maybe by the time the episodes release, it will be probably a year, which is why we're recording these episodes now. Next week, we're doing kind of taking the listeners back through your process of writing the songs originally and getting the idea to re-record them. And then we're going to have your good friend on, Bryce, the following week, who helped you kind of re-record the album. He was your drummer for the album and co-produced it with you. So we're going to have him on the podcast. and go over that whole process as well to celebrate its 1 year anniversary.
Yes, exciting stuff. It should be a blast. And I would like to say I think this podcast went very well. It was really fun talking to you about one of my favorite albums, and it was cool because the other episode being released is about one of your, well, at least your favorite album of the year. But it seems like it's probably one of your favorite albums just in general too. I don't know if
Yeah, at
that's
least for the year.
saying too much, but
And this year has been stacked too. Like it's this year, I'm surprised by how many great albums we got. Like maybe it's just because a lot of like, you know, compared to last year, I feel like there's just more albums this year that I've listened to than last year. But it's been a stacked year. And then there's still one more album we're both looking forward to, which is the Brad album. Comes out the end of this month, but we won't cover it until August when we do our artist appreciation for Brad. And then next month, we will also be back with our album series. I already know what I'm doing. And we're also gonna have a very special episode planned for next month too. But we're gonna keep that under wraps for now. But we have another kind of nice surprise coming next month. So stay tuned for that. Until then, we hope everyone takes care, and you'll be hearing from us next week. So until then, bye bye.